The Hema Committee report on Malayalam cinema was published a few weeks ago, and the aftermath is in front of all of us. But what's happening in other film industries like Kannada and Telugu? Telugu has already had a government led committee, and Kannada is asking for a similar one. Joining me today to speak about all this is Nandini Reddy, a well known director in the Telugu film industry, Sruthi Hariharan, an actor from the Kannada film industry, and Purnima Kamble, who works with women's organizations, a well known lawyer in Hyderabad. Before we go into this conversation about both these industries, let me remind you that the News Minute has been covering the HEMA committee quite extensively. We are focused on what policy changes should various governments bring in, and we are able to do this only because of your support. We are a completely ad free platform, so do become a paid subscriber and support our coverage. Nandini Reddy, coming to you first. How do you see the HEMA committee report? You must have read the report. What are your first thoughts about the report itself?
I think it's quite a detailed report. So that is something I would certainly appreciate. A lot of people were spoken to, and it gives quite a detailed insight into it. There is a lot of confusion among people when you talk report, because they think it is a kind of a witch hunt going on. It's actually just to understand the ground reality. And the same thing is what is the report that is happening even for the Telugu states, which has happened in the wake of Sri Reddy's protest. And this is not to name people, not to hover on specific incidents, but to understand the general ambience in the industry. What are the issues being faced on every specific level? Because only when we understand the ground reality can we create kind of structures and mechanisms which can address these problems. So I think the HEMA committee report coming out has actually paved the way for a lot more discussion to happen on it. And people are wary of discussion because they think it's like a seasonal thing. Like right now there's a momentum, so it's like the flu, it will be seasonal and then it will go away. But no, I don't think it's going to be that way, because I think women are very clear right now that it's been going on for far too long, and something needs to change. Also, I think the current lot of men in the industry, there has been a change, definitely. If you compare it to, say, 20 years back, there are more educated. There's a different approach right now. And a lot of men, as we have seen in the Malayalam industry itself, they have come in support of the WCC as well. And I think this will, going forward, will create new pathways for the government, for bodies within the industry, to create structures and redressal mechanisms which actually are effective and give confidence to women. That is the priority here, I feel. And the HEMA committee report is like a start of all that.
Shruti, you were amongst a group of people who went and met the Chief Minister of Karnataka, Siddaramaiah, and you've also asked for a similar report in Karnataka, right, in the Kannada film industry. Why has this demand been made earlier, or is it because after the HEMA committee report came out, you all felt that this is important exercise to be done in Kannada too?
The latter, actually. So the one of the strongest points about the HEMA committee report is that it's backed by the government. So there is definitely more credibility than any other body which is going to or any other individual who is going to talk about the general workings of the film industry, right? So hence we thought that in the wake of the HEMA committee, if we from Karnataka also have a committee which is going to investigate into the current working practices and talk to women within the industry and find out the working conditions that exist in the industry and enumerate those and find out and suggest recommendations. Because for me, the most significant part of the HEMA committee report were the recommendations provided by the committee report, wherein they spoke about fair employment practices and maybe a law coming in place, to probably eradicate casting couch or unfair employment practices in the film industry, and how they were talking about the facilities that is provided or not provided in the industry right now, and how that needs to be an absolute prerequisite. For example, washrooms, and safe transportation for not just female actors, but also junior artists dancers, and women who work across the board within the film industry. Uh, for us, that was very significant, the recommendations provided by the HEMA committee. And we thought that when such a committee, which is backed by the Karnataka government, provides recommendations, it will be taken more seriously and hopefully implemented with less resistance and more fervor by all the production houses and people working in the film industry.
Purnima, if I can come to you now, what the Hema committee did, what Nandini and Shruti are also saying, is for the government to institute a committee and then recommendations to be brought in, right? But isn't a lot of onus, a lot of trust being placed on governments here? And from the Kerala example we have seen, even the government is bowing down to pressure from the industry itself, from the same men who control the industry. So will that model again work now in Karnataka and Telangana or Andhra Pradesh? Because in Kerala, we are seeing the government is resisting. Till today, the government has not said anything about the recommendations.
Okay, Dhanya, that's a very good question you've asked, because what I realize is that people don't understand what is already there, which is the POSH Act. Okay, what is the POSH Act trying to do? Let's first understand what is the POSH Act. POSH Act is a beneficial legislation which has been brought in place to help women in the workplace who are facing this discrimination. So first point that I would like to make here is this is not a women's rights issue. The moment you treat it as a women's rights issue, the whole issue goes, completely, the essence of this act is not understood. So this act is saying that every woman in the workplace should be treated equally. And therefore, what the points that Shruti made out are very correct. The Hema Committee report goes beyond just sexual harassment. It talks about equal opportunity, etc., etc. So it's important to understand that this is a fundamental right which is promised under our constitution: no discrimination and equal opportunity to be able to work, to live with dignity. These are fundamental rights which women have been discriminated against, and therefore this act. So this is not a women's rights or women empowerment or anything. All these fancy words are not needed. Now, coming to the film industry. Okay, one more step, I will go back and just explain again to you. The POSH Act is a very, very wrong acronym, according to me. It's the Sexual Harassment Act at the Workplace Act, Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal. Redressal is only one part of it. Prevention and protection is another, prohibition is another aspect. Now, this act talks about both the organized and the unorganized sector. When it comes to the film industry, it's the unorganized sector. So there is already an act in place. Now, how that act is implemented, how the prevention prohibition aspect of it is implemented, how the redressal is implemented becomes key. Now, in the unorganized sector, which is the film industry, it is very, very unique. The situation is very unique. Perhaps this act in itself is not sufficient, and therefore the need for government intervention. You see, it's not like people are just going to the government and saying, no, you please do it for us, you help us. Government will say, yeah, the act is already in place. It's just about every employer implementing, making an IC. It is not just about having an IC. It's not just redressal, prevention, and prohibition itself. Now, what is unique about the film industry? There are multiple layers. You have temporary workers, you have ad hoc workers, you have all kinds of relationships that exist at the workplace, in the sense you have people coming in for 2 days, coming in for 3 days. The POSH Act, the definition of employee, tries to cover all these unique scenarios. But in the case of the film industry, that perhaps is not completely covered. There is a big void. There are people who are, who is the employer becomes the question. At what level, who is the employer? Who is to do this prohibition and prevention? So if you have big studios, they can have policies, they can have everything in place. They can do orientations. I don't know how much of it they do, but workshops are important. What is this act trying to do? It is saying, don't do such acts. It is not saying, do such acts and you will be punished. You see, redressal is only one part of it. But the intention of the act is that there is training, retraining, there's constant knowledge given to everybody that you cannot do such acts. And if an act is done, say no, and you have a redressal mechanism. Now, where do you implement all this in the film industry? Who is the employer? What is the workplace? This becomes a very important question. And that needs to be redressed. That is not effectively redressed. In a situation like this, there is a void. And sexual harassment at the workplace usually is about power play. It's about people in the position of power being able to exploit situations where women are vulnerable, right? And when power reinforces exploitation, power also makes things work in a manner where their exploitation is not questioned. So, this rebalancing of power is what is needed. Rebalancing of very, very set power positions is not easy. And therefore, government intervention is needed. Therefore, government needs to work with the various chambers. I don't know how it works within the industry. Maybe, and there's a very good point that was made by the Kerala High Court. I was reading these judgments before your session. Maybe what Kerala High Court, the Honorable Kerala High Court in one matter said that, it's the film itself that should be taken as the basis. And then the production unit that has launched the film actually becomes the employer for everybody involved in the film. And then the definition of employee comes there. So anyone directly, indirectly, temporary, and then that unit should have an IC. But that is only the redressal part. What about protection and prohibition? In an organized company, you have policies, people sign up to policies. Do you have contracts in place? So all these things come into play. Therefore, government intervention is required. Rebalancing of power is not easy to be done only in silos. I hope that answers your question.
That answers my question, but presents more questions. Nandini, rebalancing of power, is that even possible in the film industry? For example, the Hema Committee talks about this power structure in the Malayalam industry, right? A few people controlling the industry. Now, how much ever they say no, it does exist and everybody knows about it. What about the Telugu film industry? When this committee was formed, was there resistance in any form? And do you believe that if changes were to be brought forward, there would be one power structure which will oppose it?
Any change will face resistance, and this is going to be massive change. To say no, there will be no resistance is I think you're fooling yourself. At what level is the resistance going to be? How much would the battle take is going to be unfolded in the times coming. But yeah, I mean, at a very basic level, women who are speaking about this are seen as activists. So a lot of female actors hesitate to speak about it because they'll be branded as activists, and everybody is
Sorry,
still,
Nandini,
yeah.
not and adding on activists and problem creators, like
Yes,
problem makers.
yeah. I mean, activist, the word itself has seen as a problem
Problem.
creator, not like you're trying to make something better. So, female and activist is like literally like a really bad combination. And you have many examples. I mean, Chinmay is a case in point with all the issues she faces. So, but in spite of all this, we need to push forward. And yes, change will happen, but it will happen slowly. I think right now, the fact that there are young actors speaking up, that there are women speaking up itself is a sign of the times, right? Isn't it? I mean, who would have thought in the wake of the Hema Committee report that how many 17 actors have come and filed complaints, like, actual complaints? That is, I think, phenomenal. So I think going forward, definitely there is going to be change. Yes, we will face resistance, but if that is why the government mechanism is important, you see, because we have there's a film chamber, which is the umbrella body, and then there are committees and there are unions and all. This is how the whole industry is structured. Now, how do you get these unions and other bodies to incorporate these changes? Because we cannot make it compulsory for them. The chamber can only be advisory. But if there is a government regulation, whatever level it may be, I mean, initially breaking forth, we may not be able to get it to the extent that we want, but whatever basic regulations we can get into place, once the government comes in and says, from the government, these are what we say need to be done, that gives it a lot of strength, and these can be enforced by the film chamber. So definitely, I think that will create a lot of change. It will lay the foundation, is what I think.
Nandini, I also want to ask you, what did the committee actually do in Telangana? There was a committee which was formed after
Yes.
an actor called Sri Reddy came
Yeah.
up with accusations of sexual harassment in the industry. What exactly did the committee do, and how is it different from the Hema Committee?
So they met with a lot of women from various bodies, dancers, makeup artists, junior artists. They did pretty much the similar thing. The one additional hurdle that they faced, I think, was the pandemic. So right after 2019, pandemic kind of made it a little. There was a bit of slowdown which actually happened, but they did speak to quite a few women and tried to understand what is the ground reality which is happening, and took those facts into consideration before finalizing the report, is my understanding. And unfortunately, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I felt it would have had a little more momentum, because the entire switch happened from this issue to survival. That switch happened. So I think that we lost a little momentum because of that. So I'm not sure if it is going to be as thorough a report as the Hema Committee report, considering all these factors. That I guess we'll know only once the report is out there. But nevertheless, whatever it is, I felt it was a start, and a much needed start. And at least hats off to the government for putting that committee into place at that point of time. It was done pretty quickly, and that's what I would like to say about that.
Shruti, you spoke. Nandini said that women who actually talk about problems are branded as activists, and you chipped in to say that they're also problem creators. But is there also a fear factor that, despite the Hema Committee, despite the Me Too movement happening, there is fear not just about to talk about sexual harassment, but even basic human rights being not given to you, right? Like a contract not there for your salary, or being paid less salary than what you deserve, no facilities on the sets. Is there still a fear factor, no matter which industry it is?
100%. I think, yeah, addressing these issues are way more complex than it seems. It's so easy for us to sit here and just speak about all of them. But as Purnima very rightly put it, the film industry is a very complex setup. And within this complex setup, to even arrive at something like payment, for example, how do you say how much do you get paid for art, which can't be really quantified? What is the amount that I as an actor should be ideally demanding as opposed to my contemporary? These are very basic questions that need to be first answered before we arrive at an actual number, because it is not like a corporate structure, and it is very difficult to corporatize as Purnima again said, it's a disorganized sector, the film industry. So hence, to create structure or balance power within the film industry is a very complex situation. So hence, all we need, I think, Danya, is a start. And the start has begun. We've set the ball rolling, right? It's a long way. I don't even know if it'll happen in my lifetime, right? But eventually, women have been silenced all these years, all these decades since films have been started, being made. And finally, here we are talking about basic rights such as washrooms and transportation and safety. So I think it's a start, but we are a long way till we go to actually finding uh, fair solutions to all of these problems.
Danya, I have a
And
point to
yes,
make.
there is a
Sorry.
fear about, like, sorry,
Sorry.
there is a fear, and there's a fear with respect to actors like us who choose to speak about things like this and speak about the issues that exist within the film industry. And it's twofold. So one side, the repercussion of that is we get lesser work, which is extremely sad. So the work is now not based on how talented we are or if we suit a character or not, but it is more like, hey, is she going to be easy to work with? Because that is also very important. So if she's not easy to work with, let's not cast her, because there are so many other actors who can, replace her. That. And the second angle to that is that she's making the whole industry look bad. And that is just so sad, because I know that's exactly what the WCC is being blamed about. And I believe that WCC is one of the strongest women bodies. And I personally am extremely inspired by the work that they are doing. But it's so sad that most of them call all of us people who make the industry look bad.
Nandini, you want to add
Yeah.
something? I need to
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
Shruti.
So we were talking about power. So I think the success the WCC has had and the strength it has come from some of the biggest names in Malayalam female actors being part of the WCC. See, they lent their heft
Yeah.
to the WCC, and you know, there is a power struggle here between men and women, but there are women in place positions of power within the industry who need to use their heft. Otherwise, what is the point if you can't build that bridge and take it forward? And I believe even now in the industry, I believe that there are still people hesitating, but there are women in positions of power. Telugu film industry, I'm so happy, has so many female producers, active female producers now, and increasingly. And I just can see the environment changing. I see more women EPs coming onto the set, and the more women technicians come onto the set, I believe there is a sense of security that tends to come in. Not that all women are the same. I mean, but I feel the ambience can change definitely. And I will tell you a small incident which I came to know recently. One female actor, very well-known female actor, was on a set, and she was witnessing an assistant director being called out, something like darling and dear kind of tone by one of the senior actors, which they think is very cool to do. And this was bothering her, so she called that girl in front of that actor and she said, "What is your name?" And the girl said, "So and so is my name." She said, "Dhanya is my name." And then she said, "Sir, her name is Dhanya, that's what you should call her." And then she told this girl, "Next time anyone calls you darling or dear, you tell them my name is Dhanya." So she empowered that girl right at that point, and she made a point very clear. And I think things like this are very, very important in this so-called power game that we are talking about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Shruti, I want to ask you something and then move to Purnima also. You were one of the first few people who spoke about a misconduct experience which happened in your sets, right? Long ago. And then you were forced to, it became a police complaint. And the police finally said that there is no evidence. I remember speaking to you at that time, and then you said that I don't want to challenge anything now because it was the job of the police to find the witnesses. How has that whole experience been? And when you now see what is playing out in the after the Hema committee, right? Women speaking their minds, and then they're made to file a police complaint because the government is saying we won't do anything till there's a police complaint.
I just hope that the way my case was handled or is handled is much better, is better for these women. And honestly, I think it comes back to us defining what justice means in this case. What does it mean to every woman who's been a survivor? What does justice mean? For me, my justice was the moment I found courage to put out this story and talk about it. I think I found justice. So, hence, the aftermath of it all, though, was more traumatic than the experience itself. Uh, I would still say, very with a lot of hope in my heart, that things have changed post that. There has been this amount of fear that, hey, though it's a joke, the whole Me Too is a joke. I know how people talk about the Me Too movement. In fact, I behind my back, I know a lot of people refer to me as Me Too Shruti. And it's very funny. Why? Because I wear that with a lot of pride. I have no problems in being called Me Too Shruti. However, I see that there is a lot of change in the behavior of men post this, because men now know that no more are we going to remain silent. No more are women going to remain silent. And with respect to the legal route, Dhanya, yes, my case was closed for the lack of evidence, and I did not have the strength within me or the financial ability within me to fight it anymore. So hence I let it close. But I am still fighting the defamation case that was filed against me. It's been 6 years now, and the defamation case is still going on, and my lawyer appears in court every single during every single hearing. So I don't know how much of taking this legal route is going to provide justice to these women. And justice is an individual definition that each of these women should have for themselves. But if justice means wronging the right, then the legal route is probably another option.
Purnima, what are your thoughts about it? For example, from the day the Hema Committee report is out, two different dialogues have been happening, right? One is who are the people named in the Hema Committee report, the perpetrators? Why is there no action against them? The second is about the women who have come out and spoken. That they're not part of the Hema Committee. They've simply spoken on TV channels about their experiences. And the government of Kerala forms a special investigation team, which is going back to each of these women who came on TV and said, now, do you want to file a police complaint? We know Shruti's example. Many of these women do not have any evidence per se to give because these are things which happened in the past. So, how should governments and the legal system be looking at this? Should we have a new vision for all this?
Okay, that's a very good question, Dhanya. This is a very unique situation. Again, I'll go back to that. This is women coming out to rebalance the power structures. When there are such strong power structures, it is difficult for a woman to even approach the legal system, whether it is the civil side, whether it's the police, criminal side. They want to speak out, but they don't have a place to speak out. And when they speak out is when they feel the strength to speak out. And that strength is the collective strength. When they are seeing others speak out is when they speak out. Okay. Now, there may be women who have faced these incidents maybe years back, but they are finding the strength now. So they may not have evidence. Yes, you are absolutely right. A new vision will have to be put in place as to how to deal with these issues. However, law has its own boundaries. Law has its own limitations. You see, you have the civil law, which is the Posh Act. There is a limitation. You can only make an application or your complaint within a certain time frame. You have the criminal law, where again there are certain limitations. You're nobody's beyond law. So you're coming out and speaking, no doubt, but there are limitations that are there under law where you're not able to utilize fully the laws that are available because you've not had the strength, or you don't have the witnesses. However, women should not be faced with retaliation as something that the government or the film industry, the powers to be, have to make sure that there is no retaliation. Retaliation, or the fear of retaliation, when there are very strong power centers, is key, in stopping these women from coming out and speaking. As Shruti just rightly pointed out, women won't get work the way they should get because of their talent, right? Only because they are scared that there will be retaliation if they speak out. So while law may have its limitations, I'm sure the industry, the film chambers, and the powerful people, as Nandini rightly said, if you don't have powerful people lending their voices, imagine the smallest of junior artists, the smallest of technician. Will she be able to speak out? You need role models who will come and speak out and say, yes, I'm standing behind you. You speak. Nothing will happen to you. You see, with great power comes great responsibility, and that is responsibility, which is collective responsibility. So I do believe on a non-legal, practical, and a more larger dimension, I would say the industry has to take the responsibility and have a different vision as to how to stop retaliation. Once retaliation is stopped, of course, there may be some complaints which are not correct, some malafide, some false. Law takes its own course, weans out such cases. Don't worry about those. Because of these false cases, the real women who need that support should not be harmed. Therefore, this retaliation, anti-retaliation, whistleblower, these are concepts which are there in your organized sector. Companies have these, the responsible companies, mind you. Even in the organized sector, implementation of Posh Act is not happening the way it is intended. You see, the Posh Act is saying that the government and the court cannot be there in every organization. Therefore, I'm making the employer responsible to do certain things too. Make sure there is prevention and prohibition. And in the eventual circumstances that something does happen, you will redress. Even organized sector, mind you, is struggling. Very big MNCs have it, but the middle level, smaller companies don't have it. The awareness is very, very poor. I do lots of training sessions. But the first question I ask is, how many of you have heard of this act? You will not believe me. In companies where I have trained, retrained, still there will be hands not coming up saying, I know the act. That means awareness is very, very poor. Now come to the unorganized. And in the film industry's case, it is not just unorganized, it's disorganized. Shruti, thank you for lending that term to me. That's a very good term you've coined for the film industry. It's not just unorganized, it is disorganized. In such an industry, how are you going to bring awareness, bring this whole thing of Posh Act and the police? And I must compliment the Telangana police. They've actually implemented the Sahas scheme, Mr. Goel, who's brought this in. It's a fantastic initiative. It's trying to bring the organized, unorganized sector along with the police together to see if, how to take this to the next level where organizations are doing what they are supposed to do. So in Telangana, of course, the police is also getting very, and the women and child development, but I've seen the Sahas is a brainchild of the Telangana police and Ms. Shikha Goel in particular. A lot is happening as far as bringing awareness is concerned, but is the film industry and the film, the entire setup actually implementing it for themselves? And that is where you need powerful voices to lend their voices. And then women will speak up and come. So for your question, yes, a new vision is needed. A new way of handling these complaints is needed. Don't shame them for them having had the courage to come and speak. Don't label them. It is very, very sad to know that the Me Too movement is joked about. It is very sad, because understand the essence of why this movement has come about. This movement has come about because women did not know how and where to speak. Because they saw other women speaking, that collective strength is what brought them out, and they are all speaking up. So people who are shaming Me Too movement or joking about it, I think they need to introspect. And I think powerful men and women, not just women, men and women. And I think there needs to be an appreciation of any man who speaks up. I think this is more about, people recognizing that this is something, a basic fundamental right that a woman needs when she goes on the set. So yes, a new vision is required. However, when it comes to law needs to be implemented. Law will be implemented in its own way. So you will have to go through the entire grind. Nothing special. Nothing off the ordinary but can be done there. But yes, there are gaps. There needs to be a study. Government and the industry should come together, study, make guidelines, understand what it is, and then follow it collectively and see what can be done to make a better service of the law to women who are aggrieved. So I hope that is what
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we kind of, when WCC started off, a lot of them were kind of, cordoned off by the whole industry. It was like an unspoken rule. Nobody would cast them, etc., etc. Parvati has spoken enough about it. I think other women in other industry and men who understand the situation need to take cognizance of that and make sure that it doesn't happen. And that responsibility is on each of us who are in a position to make sure to some extent that it doesn't happen. That women producers have to come forward and say, we will not ostracize these people. Once these things happen enough number of times, then it becomes the norm. Like, few years ago, heroines who were married and had children were never considered that they would come back and act. They would only become character actors, so to say. Now, married heroines are heroines. It's just the same. It's changed in the last 10, 15 years itself. Now we don't even discuss about something like that. So this kind of sustainable change, if it is there for long enough, and initially the struggle will be there, but if it is there for long enough, then that becomes the norm. Then nobody will even question it. So then that fear that we will get marginalized the minute we speak up will reduce over time. So I think initially everybody who can support these people needs to support them, make sure they get adequate employment, make sure they're not ostracized. I think that's going to be very key. And I'm talking about all the men and the women who understand and support the situation should be doing it. I'm not saying only women should be doing it, but as an industry together, we need to come and do it to change the ground reality. And unless that happens, it's going to be tough no matter what government regulations come into place.
And I'll just add one thing to what Nandini said. Change only comes with conversation. There has to be dialogue. And if you don't let dialogue and conversation happen, no change happens. So if people are just going to sit mum, you can't expect a change. So I think people speaking out is the seed for change. Right. And there is another thing. There has to be awareness. The POSH Act actually has a redressal mechanism for the unorganized sector, which is the LC, which is your local committee formed by the district collector. I don't know how many people in the film industry actually know that. Women should know that. So there have to be active training sessions, orientation sessions. I don't know how your structures work. Maybe the unions need to talk about it, or the film chamber has to ensure that every production house has this common orientation program, but awareness is needed. So
the problem is only when there's this thrust that dispersal happens, and then there's a kind of a dying down of it. This kind of information dispersal needs to be happening frequently.
Nandini, I'll wrap up with one question to you and Shruti, but I want to just tie everything together. So my question to you is in two parts. One is the fear of retaliation, right, which all of you have spoken about. What are the conversations currently happening in the Telugu film industry where you work, where you are all banding together saying that if there is a retaliation, how will you support these women? The second is, what are the problems that you see in the Telugu film industry? Hema Committee has more or less made it clear what is happening in the Malayalam industry, right? But ever since that, Malayalam industry now does have ICs in production sets. What is the reality of the Telugu film industry?
We have some places where there are ICs. For example, Annapurna Studios was one of the first ones to have an IC, because Supriya, who was part of Voice of Women and is part of the film chamber, was one of the initial people who was pushing for this. And there are some production houses that have ICs. So that's what I'm saying. It's not uniform. It's there in bits and pieces. And we have been there as a group, Voice of Women as a support group, to support these women. Few incidents have come which they have managed to kind of resolve. Some of them have gone up to a situation where a complaint needs to be filed, and then the women have backed out. So this kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation has been happening. But like I said, especially in the last 5 years, number of women technicians, number of women producers, women in power positions in the film industry to actually make some change has drastically increased. So I am very optimistic about the environment in the Telugu film industry going forward. I have been speaking to young male actors who all would like a better space for working, because they are also scared now. What if somebody comes and puts a false complaint against us? So it's not just them. Everybody wants to work in a convenient, conducive environment where women are safe, men are safe, where redressal mechanisms are there, and that we have faith in the system. So that is what we are trying to create here. We're trying to create a chain of command where there's a conversation where if you have this issue, you can go and complain here at this panel. Going forward, next step from there, do we take it to the SHE teams? We've been speaking to Chicago LG also about the SAHAS program, how we can start having training workshops within the Telugu film industry for that, so that we can link up directly to the SHE team. Minute there's a police body backing it up, suddenly there's a certain degree of confidence that the women also get in. So Voice of Women has tried to be like this connecting point between the smaller women groups, so we at least have this communication coming through. So we have these little chains of women who are relaying information back to us, and then we are processing how to take it forward. We are having conversations with the film chamber, with Ma, and so far they have been very proactive. They have responded positively, which is a big step for us. So I'm pretty optimistic about how things could shape up going forward in the Telugu film industry.
I just want to specifically ask this again. For example, reading the Hema Committee report, we now know that a lot of actors, technicians in Malayalam film industry do not have a contract, right? And on the sets, there are very few facilities being given to them. Similarly, what are the issues that you feel exist in the Telugu film industry which needs to be addressed?
Dhanya, we had all these issues of washrooms, of safe transport, and all these were addressed way back in 2019. and we send letters out to film producers. If the chamber sent these letters out asking for these minimum basic facilities into place, and some places definitely more work needs to be done, but those procedures were initiated right in 2019. And that's what I'm saying. So all these systems and information chains are still there, that if you're still having a problem, please do come and discuss. There's still issues we need to work out, like women are still not given makeup cards. So there is a battle being fought for that, although there is Supreme Court judgment that they cannot deny them. There are union issues, there are smaller issues which are under the umbrella of the film chamber. But what is enforceable, what is not enforceable, comes again with a strong legal wiring. That's what we are looking for. So there are things that we have been trying to work out, but there are certain things that need to come from a government mechanism also. To give parity in terms of work opportunity, in terms of facilities at work, etc.
Shruti, finally to you, what do you think are the changes that the Kannada film industry needs to first address?
I think it would be this whole huge umbrella of first getting a committee such as the Hema Committee and investigating on the current working conditions. Because even 2 days ago, one of the leading regional channels had an interview of some of the women, leading actresses in Kannada, who spoke about how they've had no experiences of harassment or abuse whatsoever. So when there are such contradictory statements, I think it becomes very inconvenient for all of us to try and bring about change. So now, hey, I'm like, what is happening right now? Where are we at right now? So to figure out where are we at right now, I think we need a committee such as the HEMA committee to first address all of these issues and bring some kind of structure into the problems that exist and then provide solutions. I'm also very interested in what Purnima and Nandini spoke about in terms of prevention, the workshops that need to happen. Also, with respect to the code of conduct that the WCC is going to release, these I think are very, very necessary going forward, because we spoke about this, Dhanya, how this has been a system that has been accepted for so many decades. Men themselves don't know that this is wrong. They all these years thought it was okay to behave that way that they were behaving towards the women. And as Nandini pointed out, how that actor said, hey, it's not okay anymore. She has a name. You can't darling her, right? It begins from there, behavior. So the moment we have some kind of training by which we are able to say, or a code of conduct by which we are able to say that this is not okay anymore, I think that's the first step towards change. And that's what we as the industry, or from the fire organization that you know about, need to first work on. Yeah, prevention and workshops. A very
Dhanya,
interesting point.
in fact, yeah, Dhanya, in fact, if you allow me to just add one, I know you said this was the closing, but I just
No,
want
no,
to
that's
mention
fine. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
the
Go on, go on.
essence, the essence of the Posh Act is not redressal. The moment people say Posh Act, their mind goes to IC and the complaints that come. The essence of the Posh Act is nipping issues in the bud, which is through awareness, through training, both behavioral and legal, and whatever training is needed in that particular set of people that you're dealing with. That is why this act is so broad, because it is meant to be implemented across the spectrum, and it cannot be tailor made to any particular spectrum. So therefore it's very broad, and therefore that subset that you're going to be addressing through the training, etc., whatever you do, the employer has been made responsible, and therefore prevention, therefore prohibition, to make the right policies, to make the right contracts, to make the right training, to make sure that people in the organization know, A, it is wrong to do this. The workplace is a no harassment zone. And third is that they know that this is how they have to behave, and make sure that there is no sexual harassment. Redressal is only the last in all this. Therefore, the spectrum, what the Posh Act is trying to do first needs to be understood, which is not understood. The moment we say Posh Act, everyone says all workplaces. Forget the unorganized, organized sector. No, 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 we don't have such cases. Saying that we have no cases is in fact a red flag for me. That means there are no voices, and the voices, if they are there, are being suppressed. So I think voices are important. If there is a genuine, if you genuinely want something to be addressed, voices are important. Therefore, the essence of POSH Act has to be understood. And my real, I would say, my appeal to the industry is, please understand, you are employing so many women, young girls with aspirations are coming to you. One wrong step and their entire life is ruined. Therefore, understand the essence of the POSH Act and implement it fully in the spirit and the letter. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nandini, Purnima, and Shruti. There is a lot of conversation around film industry, which unorganized, disorganized, however we prefer to call it. But I hope that this discussion does not get limited to the film industry alone. All industries need to speak about women's safety, including the media. We've had several conversations over the years. And I also want to tell everyone watching to go read the news minute. We've written for years about what other industries go through. We also have a specific section called Hema Committee. And remember, we're a completely ad-free platform. We are dependent on subscribers. So go become a paid subscriber. And thank you very much.